Hello, good evening. It's another Sunday. Welcome to Eye on Port. This program is proudly brought to you by Serene Insurance, Goal PLC, the Ghana Revenue Authority, Ghana Link, Meridian Port Services, and Phoenix Insurance. Our proud media partner is the Business and Financial Times. This program is powered by the Ghana Ports and Harbours Authority. We are streaming live this evening on Facebook at Ghana Ports and Harbours Authority. Still on Facebook, we are streaming live at Port of Tema. On YouTube, we are streaming live at Ion Port. We'll get interactive in the course of the discussion this evening, and the numbers to send your WhatsApp messages to is 053-803-7353. The numbers again, 053-803-7353. In the course of the discussion, we'll also open the phone line so you could call and then share your thoughts with us. In the meantime, we're going for some messages from our sponsors. We'll be right back.
Guys, now I'm tired. I'll go on a date with whoever gets here first.
Princess, really?
Okay, I come.
Shut up!
Mame,
Boss, fill my tank with Super XP Ron 95.
Well up with Super XP Ron 95 and Diesel XP high performance products from Goyle.
Sorry, Tony got here first, so I'm stepping with him.
Oh,
Cut him.
hey, go for mami.
Choose Super XP Ron 95 and Diesel XP for an energizing driving experience. Always go for Goyle Super XP Ron 95. Goyle, good energy.
Goyle is good energy. Electricity, then pay your taxes. Yeah. Our taxes, our future.
Because you see, without our taxes, we wouldn't have good roads, good schools, better hospitals, street lights, and other very important social amenities. When we pay our taxes, we give our children free and quality education. Talga, my money too small. Why should I pay my tax? Look, small. Salifo, it doesn't matter how small or big your business or income is. You still have to pay your taxes. The little taxes from each and every one of us, when put together, could give your community clean water or that deprived school with tables and chairs. Please pay your taxes. It is your responsibility. It is your civic duty. It is the law.
Impressive factory. If only I had listened to you, I wouldn't have been in this mess. That devastating fire virtually wiped out the whole factory and my warehouse.
Remember my misfortunes last year? Serene Insurance Asset All Risk Fire policy that I took were there to pay for my damaged stocks in the warehouse, and my machines that were affected by the floods have been replaced. My accident vehicle is back on the road thanks to Serene Insurance motor policy. Currently, my goods are on the high seas covered with their marine cargo insurance policy. I was just telling Ajima about Serene Insurance.
Oh, Ajima,
tell him more.
As a road contractor, I make sure I do my contractors all risk insurance
for the projects, and then workers' compensation for all the workers on site. With Serene Insurance, they will make sure they will cover your unknown tomorrow today.
Serene Insurance, a new face of insurance. Call us now.
MPS Terminal 3 is Africa's new state-of-the-art container terminal at Tema Port. For manufacturers, agro-processors and traders, the new port means business can be done faster. This infrastructure boost will improve Ghana's port handling capacity, connect more trading routes, and oil the engine of growth for the economy, creating greater opportunities across all sectors as Africa's markets merge and become the largest trading bloc globally. MPS, we connect, you thrive.
Business and life can be like the sea sometimes. Sometimes serene, sometimes calm, sometimes turbulent, and at times it brings the unexpected. However it is like, trust Phoenix Insurance for your home, car, business, and marine insurance needs. Call 0302 246 319 or 0243 690 492.
At Phoenix, you experience a delightful service delivered with wisdom.
So welcome back from the break. It's now time to look at some local stories that happened in the course of the week.
Workers of the Ghana Ports and Harbours Authority, together with other agencies under the maritime sector, were duly represented in the 2024 May Day celebration. The program, which was under the theme Election 2024, the role of workers and social partners in securing peaceful elections for national development, was held at the Independence Square at Accra to acknowledge the roles and contributions of workers in nation building. The Ghana Ports and Harbours Authority, Meridian Ports Services, Ghana Shippers Authority, Ghana Standard Authority, Ghana Institute of Freight Forwarders, Fisheries Commission, and other agencies represented the maritime and dock workers sector during the parade. Among other agencies participated in the celebration. The President of the Republic of Ghana, Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo, lauded the various institutions and organizations for their hard work and contributions in their respective sectors that has contributed to the development of the country.
I must at the outset express the heartfelt appreciation of the Ghanaian people and their government to the hard-working men and women across all sectors whose dedication and commitment drive our economy forward. That is why we celebrate you on May Day.
He disclosed that government is in the processes of enacting the new comprehensive and contemporary labor law that protects the interests of all actors in the labor force in the country by the end of the year.
Organized labor has shared the burden of government and made sacrifices that ensure recovery and stability. The least I can do for the over 11.5 million people in the labor force and the next generation is to enact a new labor act that is comprehensive and contemporary and protects the interests of all actors in the world of work.
The Secretary General of the Trade Union Congress, TUC Ghana, Dr. Yauba, called on workers to work hand in hand to promote peace in the country.
Each and every Ghanaian must do whatever he or she can so that together we can achieve peaceful election in December this year.
Meanwhile, in Takoradi, workers of the port of Takoradi joined their colleagues in other institutions to partake in the May Day parade at the Ghana Secondary Technical School Park. The Western Regional Minister, Kwabna Ochrida Kumensa, commended the labor force for their enormous contributions in their specialized domains and urged them to collaborate in order to fortify worker solidarity for the nation's advancement.
I don't see any under their friend is sustainable development goals. Now, Obibiara now doing what say, I call you no any sustainable development goals, no any cocoa, another on you brebra. I am you did it. I am Ghanaian Simono. The most important thing there is Obibiara, they are my sustainable development goals. No, Ghana Ports and Harbours Authority.
A joint Customs Consultative Committee meeting has been held to discuss ways of improving trade facilitation and promoting effective collaboration among stakeholders in the port clearance chain. JCCC is made up of representatives from key stakeholder groups in the maritime sector, such as Customs Division of GRA, Ghana Ports and Harbours Authority, Ghana Link Network Services, Meridian Port Services, Council of Freight Forwarders Association, Ghana Standards Authority, the Food and Drugs Authority, among other agencies. The Assistant Commissioner of the Customs at the Tema collection, Christiana Odieje, assured the commitment of Customs Commission to resolving the challenges associated with uncleared cargo list.
We are working feverishly to ensure that at least when the UCL list is prepared, we will be informed about those that are for transit, so that we can in turn inform the reps, that's the various Chamber of Commerce for Niger, Mali, and the other people, so that they are also aware that these are transit containers that are going on UCL, so that the importers or consignees can be informed about the containers.
A member of the ICAM's implementation team, Charles Okai-Janoa, encouraged stakeholders to provide positive recommendations that will enhance work growth.
We also want to say that our doors are always open for any suggestions for improvement. And we are also here to answer questions related to some issues that may be bothering you, that you believe that there should be an improvement.
The Executive Secretary of the Council of Freight Forwarder Associations, Nana Fredua Oforiata, urged the GRA and relevant stakeholders to balance revenue maximization with trade facilitation so as to increase traffic through the ports.
Even though we are in the middle of a recession, GRA Customs should tamper revenue maximization with trade facilitation in order to bring back the traders who have diverted costs to our neighboring ports.
The Stakeholder Engagement Manager at the Meridian Port Services, Charles Osafo, took participants through operational activities at the Terminal 3. The Head of Import Inspection at the Ghana Standards Authority, Stephen Edu, gave a presentation on the statistics on trade compliance for the year 2022 and 2023.
The Module 8 of the Support to West Africa Integrated Maritime Security Project has been held at the Regional Maritime University. The EU-funded project is a 9-module program which consists of Introduction to Maritime Security Environment, the Maritime Security Functional Areas, Legal and Police Frameworks for Advancing Maritime Security, Blue Economy and Maritime Environment, Maritime Crisis Management, among others. The Module 8, which seeks to address complexities of safety and security in the marine space, had participants from the Navy, Maritime Administration, Port Authority, Marine Police, and even judges drawn from countries like Ghana, Togo, Cote d'Ivoire, and Niger. An electrical engineer and an old student of the Regional Maritime University, Juola Hiable, who was a speaker at the program, drummed home the need for security and safety in the maritime space to be enhanced, as he shared his experience as a captive for 1,000 days after their vessel was hijacked by Somalian pirates in the Gulf of Guinea.
We realized that our captain tried to do defensive maneuvering, and within about 15 minutes, everything subsided, and our bosun came and shouting, "Colleagues, come out, come out. Your ship has been hijacked by Somali pirates. Come." And we came out from our hideout. We climbed to the officer's deck. Climbing to the bridge, we saw this pirate wielding an AK-47 and he asked us to put our hands on our head. So after 2 years, 9 months, 1,000 days, for the first time we stepped our feet on land on the 23rd of December 2012.
He stated that fire, ship grounding, sinking, explosion, collation, and armed robbery or piracy are some dangers that are likely to happen in the maritime space, and urged vessel crew members to always adhere to security measures while on board.
In the marine space, there are a lot of happenings there. There is an amputation, electrocution, there is corrosion, man falling overboard, a lot of them. But we are going to look at some of the major ones. So the major ones, some of them that happens as fire, the grounding of the ship. So sinking of the ship also can happen. There can be collision.
The coordinator of the SWAIMS project, Engineer Augustus Adilamte, revealed that the module's goal was to help maritime industry actors understand the consequences of maritime crimes.
Shipping carries about 90% of international trade. So if anything affects shipping, then it's a challenge. And you can see COVID times. It took shipping to let the wheels of industry run. So this particular program was set up to make sure that the actors in the maritime industry appreciated the main effect of maritime crime. And this has more to do with kidnapping for ransom.
He added that the model thrived on collaboration and cooperation and urged for interagency collaboration among players in the value chain.
This particular model has to do with collaboration and cooperation. So that is why we have addressed this issue holistically.
The national executives of the Ghana National Association of Medical Laboratory Scientists have lauded the state-of-the-art practice AI application focus of the GPHA Takoradi Hospital's 2024 Lab Week celebration. Unlike the generic National Lab Week theme dubbed "The Lab is Everything," the sub-theme chosen by the Ghana Ports and Harbours Authority Takoradi Hospital was the future of lab services in Ghana and the application of AI. The president of the Ghana Association of Medical Laboratory Scientists, Dr. Abudu Rahamani, described the AI-focused sub-theme of the GPHA Takoradi Hospital Lab Week celebration as a pace-setting initiative in line with the international trends, as even most Ghanaian labs are yet to catch up on the trend of applying AI to medical laboratory operations.
Artificial intelligence has come in to revolutionize the work space when it comes to medical laboratory. We know that currently the trend is not as high as we expect in the system. Most of the laboratories are now understanding, they are now trying to strategize in terms of application of artificial intelligence in our workspace.
The GPHA Takoradi Hospital Administrator, Dr. Helen Tete, also explained the reason and preparations that went into this year's Lab Week celebration.
One of the things that we seek to do as a hospital is to provide a one-stop shop healthcare to our clients. And so not only in terms of consultation, but also in terms of the lab support. Thankfully, we've been able to acquire certain equipment which GPHA management has done so well to help us acquire so that we can do most of the lab tests that our clients need.
Other activities that took place as part of the GPHA Takoradi Hospital's 2024 Lab Week celebrations included health education, free screening for the post community, and donation of free 100 glucometers to diabetic patients. It's now time for us to take a look at the phrase of the day. Last week's phrase was act of man. Today we are looking at act of God.
Act of God. Act of God refers to accidents of a nature beyond human control, such as flood, lightning, or hurricane, which are usually quoted as force majeure.
All right, so tonight, logistics is what we're going to discuss, and logistics is often described as the unsung hero of international trade, ensuring that products reach their destination on time and also in perfect condition and at the right cost. Tonight, we will be delving into the fascinating world of logistics, and then we'll be exploring its challenges, innovations, opportunities that are there within logistics, and also from transportation and warehousing to customs clearance to supply chain management. We'll examine the crucial role that logistics play in continental trade. And tonight I have in the studios three gentlemen to do justice to this particular subject. And it gives me pleasure to welcome my guest for this evening, Mr. Apia Kusi Adomako Esquire. He is the West African Director, CAT International. Say welcome. Okay, and then I also have Mr. Ziad Amui. He's the National President of Borderless Alliance. Mr. Amui, welcome. Okay, and then my third guest is Naliban Wujanji. He's the Regional Chairperson and also the Supply Chain Consultant with Supply Chain Hub Africa. Mr. Wujanji, good evening and welcome.
Good evening, and thank you very much for having me.
All right, thank you very much. I would like to start with this evening's discussion. I mean, we all know logistics play a very critical role in trade. So I want to find out from you, Mr. Wujanji. Yes, you are close to me, and I know you do a lot of supply chain, logistics, and all that. So kindly tell us, I mean, how would you define the role that logistics play in international trade? And also, if you could tell us what the key components are.
So thank you very much. So for starters, if trade is like a body, then logistics is the blood. Because what logistics does is, and like you rightly said, is an unsung hero. And the fact is that a lot of the activities that happen are usually not readily recognized, even though it is directly in front of us. So one would ask, in general terms, what are some of the activities under logistics? Here we're looking at the inbound and outbound transportation, you're looking at packaging, you're looking at the aspects of clearing and forwarding, you're looking at marketing, finance, you're looking at information management, amongst other things. So logistics in itself comes in to serve as the lifeblood of any operation that ensures and facilitates trade. It actually makes trade happen. Now, in terms of the components of logistics, I would want to take a step back and then look at it in terms of a supply chain, because supply chain gives a broader context of what the role that logistics plays. Because logistics in itself is more like a smaller component of the greater supply chain. The supply chain links various organizations and their operational activities. It synchronizes it, and logistics in itself looks a lot more into the within organizations and links the various functions, and that is what makes them kind of different. Okay. So in the broader context, you'd want to look at how, for example, goods are received, goods are processed, goods are transported in the supply chain. That's from the upstream side, where you have the various tiers of suppliers, and then you have the portion where transformation happens, and transformation would happen in the focal organization, where production and the processing and value addition is all done, after which it now moves further to the market. And with the market, you're also looking at it in different tiers, because you have the wholesalers, you have the retailers before it gets to the consumer. But the key factor here is that everything that happens right from the upstream to the downstream is all meant to ensure that the customer is delighted. The customer in this sense would vary depending on the product or the value chain that you're looking at. So when we talk about trade and we're looking at how trade works, what we're just trying to have a better understanding of is, with regards to the entire supply chain, how do we ensure that whatever products that are needed by the customer is able to get right through all the channels that are required and still get to the customer in the state and condition and integrity within which the customer is able to still get utility and value out of. And that is what so as a matter of fact, it has to do with the pre-production, which has got to do with the initial raw materials and all that, and then you have the transformation phase, and then you have the post-production phase. So those would be the three main components of the entire supply chain, based on which, depending on the value chain, we can now break it further down and ensure. But there are other activities also that happen within it. For example, transportation, because that provides the various linkages between one activity and the other. Packaging, that ensures that it gives the aesthetic view and makes the product attractive for the potential buyer, and also provides a lot of information by way of the labeling, amongst other things. So these are just a few of the areas that I think that, in a broader context, we could look at the function of supply chain logistics.
All right. So how would you describe the state of logistics currently?
So in terms of our general trade, the current state of logistics is a bit fragmented. A lot of the time, we tend to look at logistics and supply chain, the external of our internal market. Now, what we're trying to do is to promote continental trade. And to ensure that we're able to promote continental trade, one of the things that we're always looking at is how the products can get out of the country. So you're looking at how we harmonize custom procedures, which are currently a bit a challenge, because even in terms of how we quote our HS codes, depending on where it is going, different people have certain different understanding as to how the HS codes are quoted. We need to be able to harmonize even the processes that are within there. We need to be able to determine the kind of documentation that is required. Within the context of AFTA, the various protocols have provided some of these requirements by way of documents and other processes. And then also, it is also very important that as we go along in terms of facilitating trade, we look at the internal of the country.
Okay.
Because, if we are not able to backtrack and look at how the supply chain systems within our own country are structured, it becomes very difficult to be able to sustain the push of the products that we want to get onto the international market. So in summary, what I would say is that we have a kind of a fragmented supply chain system. In terms of connectivity, we have a challenge with regards to connectivity, and I'll give you an example. About 2 weeks ago, we were in Victoria Falls, Zimbabwe, for the CILT's Africa Forum. To get to Zimbabwe, which probably would take us maybe about 5 to 6 hours direct flight, we had to go through Addis. There was a layover. We continued the following morning to get to Victoria Falls. What we are losing there, we are losing time, we are losing man hours, which we could have been using to do other things as well. So in terms of issues of connectivity, we have a bit of a challenge. In terms of even the manpower that is required, because logistics and supply chain as it is very dynamic and keeps evolving by day. We are introducing a lot of technology, we're introducing a lot of other areas, especially now that we want to integrate our supply chains. So that also means that in that area, we also need to be able to look at how we are building capacity, because currently, in terms of the skills that is required to be able to ensure that some of these are actually done and done well, we have a bit of a challenge with it. So in general terms, I would say our supply chains are a bit fragmented, but therein also lies opportunities for Africans to be able to take up some of the opportunities within these supply chains and then move them forward to facilitate trade.
Okay, so let's move to Amui and then find out from you. I mean, you heard what he said. He said the supply chain is fragmented. Do you also hold that position?
Good evening and thank you, Solomon. It's always a pleasure to be here, and I acknowledge my brother, my Nyame neighbor's acknowledgement. And I also have to acknowledge that my brother Naliban was, until recently, the Executive Secretary of the Chartered Institute of Logistics and Transport, so he's also equally capable in the areas of logistics and transportation.
Very well, very well.
Both of us are actually what you will know as retirees, actually, in that area, but that's a different topic. I think I would like to take a step back, define and set the scene, and then answer your question. For me, and for the benefit, I think, of the general audience, I would like to simplify the definition of logistics. And I would say the logistics is the coordination of the movement of transportation of the goods that are bought and sold from the point of the supplier to the point of consumption.
Very well.
Very broadly defined like this. And my interest with regard to the importance of logistics for trade is dual, because logistics supports trade. Logistics is a derived demand of trade, actually. If there's no trade, there's no need to transport. If there's no need to transport, there's no need to coordinate what you are transporting. And that is one area why logistics is so important. But also, logistics is an industry. And just as another industry, let's say the cocoa industry, transport is an industry in itself. So the status of this industry in the various countries in Africa, as well as across various countries, is important because it is a service. Transportation is a service. Just as you buy and sell goods, transportation is a service that you buy and sell. And the status of this industry is of equal importance if we were to ensure the connectivity, which Mr. Wujanji was talking about earlier. If we don't have free movement of goods and people and information and finance across, for our own purpose, Africa, then we cannot be globally competitive. We cannot connect well to the rest of the world. But more importantly, we cannot connect well to ourselves. So I agree with him that connectivity is the key issue here. And when I think about the African Continental Free Trade Agreements and the area it's creating, the free trade area across Africa, it is obvious that we are not well connected to ourselves and we are not connected to the rest of the world. And so I would like to think of this agreement as a catalyst to help us accelerate our economic development across Africa.
But it's been about 3 or 4 years now.
It has been a while coming,
so
but keep in mind that some of the countries across Africa are coming from different points. Some of them are coming from really far behind with regard to the status of their industries and their economies. And so it's important that we not to delve too much into the AFCFTA at the moment, at least, but just to identify 3 main pillars which are important for the acceleration and development of our economies. The first one would be to build a basis for manufacturing of the production in the various countries. Then there's no point in looking at how to trade. And this takes us to the next point, which is the marketing and the trade of these goods. Once you have your goods, you identify markets across the region, from where to import and to where to export it to. And then you get to the logistics of actually moving the goods that you have produced locally from the points of sale to the points of to purchase. And then to identify the challenges along the logistics of moving the goods from one country to the other. And most of the time, that is where you start to delve into the hard infrastructure and the soft infrastructure. So the roads, the border infrastructure, the actual hardware that you need to move the goods around, and then the soft infrastructure, which is the governance issue, the non-tariff measures, the business environment, and so on. So it's a very complicated issue. Some countries come from very different points. If you look, for example, at one critical component, which my brother, Lawyer Domako, is very expert in, and it is consumer protection and copyright and intellectual property. These are very important and fundamental to support trade in order for the consumer to get goods that are traded at the competitive and to promote fair practices. So not only you need to get the goods at a reasonable cost in a reasonable time and become competitive, but you have to ensure that whatever trade is taking place within your country is compliant and consistent with the rules and regulations of your country, and that you are not giving advantage to some players over other players, creating a level playing field for everyone. At the moment, as it stands, the modes of logistics transportation are heavily skewed against African transporters and African logistics companies and African supply chain managers. And so I am hoping that while we are exploring this topic, we'll try to find a way where we can re-examine where we stand with regard to the freedom of the movement of our goods and our people and our finances, so that we'll create a more level playing field for our local, not only our local manufacturers of goods, but also the providers of the transport services in all modes of transportation.
All right, okay. So I'll come back to you. Lawyer Adomako, but can you tell us, I mean, I know you deal with the SMEs a lot. I mean, in all these, how are you supporting them to be able to overcome some of these challenges in the logistics chain for them to survive?
I think logistics, as my brother said, is a chain from pre-production, production, but unfortunately in Ghana, one thing I've realized is that most people who are in businesses, they want to become 100% owner of all the processes. They want to own the raw material, grow the raw material, transport the raw material to their factory themselves.
Jack of all trades.
And at the end of the day, the efficiency reduces. But we are beginning to see a new paradigm in Ghana where businesses, SMEs, have started seeing the need for them to specialize. And so some businesses they have decided not to even own a truck. They rather prefer businesses supply them those truck services. And as the economy develops, people will have the business cases to be able to grow a logistic ecosystem around the businesses that we have. But currently, I would say that if you find yourself outside Accra, it might be difficult in getting some efficient logistics to get your production or your businesses running. I know a factory, there's a poultry farm in Tamale that is able to slaughter close to 500 birds daily. And they need to be able to transport them to other parts of the northern part of the country. They don't have access to a cold chain delivery. But of course, most of the cold chain are in the southern part of the country. And so if someone can decide that, look, I have the cold chain truck, that van that can transport your good for you, then you, the poultry farmer, you will be much more concerned about the production of your birds and not to think about owning a truck, a cold chain delivery. And so until we understand that some parts of the business should be left to others to be able to provide. But of course, most SMEs are also concerned about predictability. Because if you want to mortgage, if you want to transfer, if you want to allow a company to provide you some services, the very point that you need it, the company says, please, sorry, we didn't get your request on time. Sorry, our truck is broken down. We don't have fuel. That means that if you are produce perishable products, most likely that your product will go waste. And so there's also a need for businesses that decide to go into the logistics around what people are doing to be responsible in terms of what they tend to do. And also the cost structure is also another big challenge. In fact, West Africa alone is seen as one of the most expensive places to move logistics. Some years ago, the World Bank published a study, and that said that they quoted New Jersey in the east coast of the U.S. as the cheapest area to move goods. West Africa is also the highest area. And until we are able to also address the high cost of logistics, the law runs the consumer who pays for these goods and services. And we need to also look at how do we confront the principalities of high cost of logistics in Africa. Because unfortunately, if you live in West Africa, a lot of things tend to conspire against you. Almost everything you have is, even we grow food products in our farming communities, but when it comes to Accra and Tema, it's so expensive.
Very well.
And when you go to most countries where they don't even grow anything there and everything is transported over the Atlantic, it's still cheaper when it gets there. Why? All because of what? The logistics systems and how inefficiencies are also driving high cost to consumers at the final end.
Okay, I'll be coming back to you. Well, Mr. Ujanji, he spoke about specialization for SMEs. One person does not hijack the system, or sometimes you have resources whereby if you restrict yourself to one aspect of the logistics, you'll be able to make some gains rather than trying to take over 4 or 5 processes. Is this the way to go?
So I think that usually there's no smoke without fire, right? For one of the things I have come to realize in the business sphere in Ghana, and I am tempted to believe that it's about the same in other parts of Africa where I've traveled to, is that we have issues of trust.
Okay.
And as a result of that, having to hand a portion of your operations to somebody else becomes a challenge, because you are now, even before the relationship starts, you already have some doubts about what is going to happen and if the person is going to be able to provide that service. The best, like you mentioned, has got to do with where we have SMEs being able to identify where within the supply chain they can provide services, and then based on their service levels can kind of spear on. But one of the things that you'd realize also is that it is when we have economies of scale that we are in a better position to reduce the unit cost of whatever our production system is.
Very well.
Now, there are also other things that also add up to the cost in Ghana. For example, today fuel prices at a certain price is above $1 now per liter.
Yeah.
When you look at the fuel prices, fuel affects everything you do in Ghana. Aside that, also another factor of production that we're looking at is electricity. That is also increasing by the day. We have water, which is required as a utility. It's increasing. We want to move into the use of technology, which is supposed to be an enabler and help us make a lot of strides in terms of how we integrate and synchronize our activities. The cost of data over a couple of months now has also been adjusted upwards. So it makes it a lot more difficult for Ghanaians especially to be competitive on the international market. Why? Because it is cheaper for me to travel across the border into Togo, do my groceries, and bring it back into Ghana, than for me to want to buy directly from here and serve the local market. But the thing about it also is that we need to be able to put in a conscious effort, especially if we want to develop our local value chains. It is important that based on the areas of interest of SMEs, SMEs, our business people or entrepreneurs, are able to identify where they can fit in and provide the service. That makes it a lot easier. So that, for example, if today I need transportation services, and the transportation services I require needs a certain degree of cooling or temperature control, then in that case, I know where to go in for it. But in Ghana today, aside one company I know that is into the provision of cold chain services, it looks like cold chain in itself is almost non-existent. So yes, it is the ideal situation, but I think that now our supply chains or our logistics services are now developing. If you want to if you do a cursory look into the services that are provided within the logistics framework, majority of it has got to do with freight forwarding. Whereby you get a clearing agent, he does the clearing of your goods for you.
Yeah.
He helps you get a truck, they haul your container for you and all of that. Or you have some of the consolidators who receive the goods and then they break bulk in their warehouses and then they do the last mile delivery as well. So yes, our logistics services are now evolving. And as it evolves, I think this is about the best time for any business or any entrepreneur or any professional who wants to go into this particular sector to actually get his head in there, so that as it evolves, you're able to evolve with it and then get a lot more benefit out of it. Otherwise, it's going to be a bit of a challenge. And it gets a lot more expensive when you want to control the entire chain, because as you go along and as your business expands, it gets a lot more cumbersome and can be very confusing for a lot of those who I know have been able to do it. And that is why even for some multinationals, many of them would go in for third-party or fourth-party logistics service providers, so that they are able to outsource their non-core functions for them to provide it, for them to provide the service to them, whilst they're also able to focus a lot more on their core, which is mostly value addition. And then that helps them to be able to focus and then do a lot more of the production. And that helps with the final product delivery to the consumer. So yes, in a nutshell, I think it's actually the way to go, but I think it may take us some time to be able to get there, especially now that AFTA is in place as well.
And sometime, I mean, from what you are saying, is it the points you've raised, is it only in Ghana, or you have some of these challenges also happening across, some other African countries?
Well, actually, I think it happens it's actually very visible in other countries as well. It happens in other countries as well.
So we are not in this alone?
No, we're not in this alone. We're not in this alone. I just got back from Lagos this afternoon, and Nigeria they're actually struggling with issues of fuel scarcity. And you have to join a very long queue to get the fuel and all of that. But fortunately, we are getting the fuel, but at a very high cost. But even then, It's something that across Africa, and probably that's one of the reasons why we are not that well connected as Ziad mentioned earlier on. Because you'd realize that it looks like, as a result of the boundaries that have been created across Africa, it's like each for himself, God for us all. So even for AFTA in itself, in a general context, for AFTA to be very, very fluid and to be very effective, we need to be able to, especially at the governmental level, to be able to say, hey, you know what, yes, I know very well I'm supposed to be in charge of this, but I'm ready to cede some level of my authority to a certain organization or unit to manage some aspects of it so that together we can come back and have a united front. But let's not forget that AFTA in itself is just one of the frameworks.
Very well.
We have the single aviation air transport market, which also looks at it, and we're also looking at the free movement of people as well. So all of these actually facilitate the process of the African integration. But we're not in this alone, and as a matter of fact, you travel to other countries and you realize you even need visas to get into the countries before you can do business. So yes, we are not alone, and hopefully I have hope that as the supply chains evolve, we'll get a lot more people to get in and then pick up some of these responsibilities.
Okay, so Mr. Boy, so in all these, what is the role of government? What should government do in order to address some of these issues that we're talking about?
I mean, in a nutshell, the traditional role of government, aside from the policy making and designing an enabling framework to organize things on a national level, but they should also be enablers in the sense that, look, no one country is an island. Yes, there's sovereignty over your legal and legislative regulatory framework, and you need to make sure that you regulate whatever goes in or out of your national boundaries to ensure safe and secure movement of goods, people, food, information, finance, and so on and so on. And so our real problem with regional integration is that the various countries find it much easier to communicate with the outside parties than it is sometimes to communicate across the borders.
Is it that we don't trust ourselves?
In a way, the systems are a little bit different. We sometimes like to think of the aspirations of opening up the markets and unleashing the potential of 1.4 billion people, or 1.5 very soon, and the equivalent of 3.5 or 6 trillion US dollars of annual GDP, as if it just takes a paper to just remove the borders and then the next day we are all integrated. That's not how regional integration works. We keep forgetting that we are coming from different backgrounds, we are coming from different points of progress along our histories and timelines across Africa. And it is very important to take a hard look at the aspirations versus the realities on a national level. We have to see how our national laws, first of all, align with our regional laws, because countries are part of regional economic communities, and then how these regional economic communities, which we are organically integrated into, also align with the aspirations of continental trade. And this is how you see that as you move from the national to the regional to the international laws and rules and regulations, you'll start to look under the hoods of international trade and international transportation, and you'll find that you actually need to be on the ground and to start to really look at what is not working and create solutions for these problems. Now, to make it more practical of what I'm saying, we speak about the economies of scale, which is about producing adequate amounts of goods or products or services. And then you bring in the transport and the logistics services in order to make these services more cost-effective, right? If you don't find a way to bundle these scattered industries and producers and manufacturers and service providers, then you will continue to be globally uncompetitive, even regionally uncompetitive. So you need, first of all, to find a way to bring people together, to bundle them together into groups, and then you provide them with services that will make them more competitive and to lower their costs, financial transaction costs, production costs, sales costs, marketing costs, and all of that. So there are tools you can do that on a policy level. You can specifically target some of the areas where you have high costs or high red tapes in certain areas. And then you design and formulate your policies in a way where you can reduce the burden of these particular rules and regulations for the economic
one step at a
operator.
time.
Exactly, right? But at the same time, you bundle them together also. So that's why, that's part of the policy formulation effort. And what I really think needs to take place in order to accelerate this kind of pivot to create a more enabling business or trade environment, not just in Ghana, but across, is to involve the economic operators and the traders and the transporters in the policy dialogue, not only at the end of it, just to amplify the message of the policymakers, but before, during, and after the policy formulation and the policy cycle. Because obviously the policy takers, as I like to call them, are the ones who will eventually benefit from these policies as economic operators, but then eventually everybody is a consumer. So if we do not create the enabling business and trade environment that allow these economic operators to thrive and to produce at a more competitive point today, then eventually in the future we are creating a situation where we are taking ourselves out of competition and we are shutting ourselves out not only to regional and continental competition, but also on global competitiveness.
All right, okay.
It's funny that Naliban mentioned refrigeration and cold storage. It was actually a very pertinent point at the recently ended African Regional Conference of the Food and Agriculture Organization, where I was a couple of weeks ago, and where the private sector declaration was very specific about its recommendations. And one of the requirements of that particular declaration was to focus on the infrastructure for the perishables and to upgrade and to look at how to create more infrastructure in cold storage areas, because it is very important, not just for the competitiveness of trade or for food production, but also because it enhances food security. So there are so many roles that governments can play, not only as policy enablers, but also in order to promote national security by addressing the issues of food security and making us more resilient on the national level and a continental level.
All right. So let me come to Lawyer Odomako and then find out from you. I mean, in all this, you are into consumer protection and also advocacy. In all this, the consumer seems to be hard hit with if there are any inefficiencies in the logistics chain, because at the end of the day, he or she would have to go to the market. How are you empowering the consumer in all this?
It's not necessarily about empowering the consumer to get a better, cheaper, or efficient service. I think the first thing we need to address, as my colleague said, is we need to address the policy environment, the macroeconomic environment. That is where I think all energy needs to be directed at, because the market is the best way of efficient ways of allocating resources. If interest rate is low, the CD is stable, businesses that are in the supply chain, the logistic chain, will be able to operate at lower cost, and at the long run, the consumers buying the product will get it at cheaper cost. And so I think that is where we should be concerned about. Unfortunately, for the past 2 or 3 months, the forces have conspired against the Ghanaian cedi, and now it is kind of bleeding profusely against the major trading currencies. And so you don't expect the consumers to get a relief on this. But I think that government policies, sound macroeconomic policies, and also engaging the private sector. In 2022, BOG came with a policy that was going to restrict the importation of some products. And we don't know whether the subsequent stability of the CD was had correlation with that or just an association with that. Maybe in this era, we may also want to look at how can we alleviate the rising cost of input and intermediary goods on the consumer. Maybe Ghanaian consumers may be concerned, may be able to say that, look, if we forgo Kauro or Wele or other things, the CD can be stable. And so they may all agree to support government policies. But around this time, government is not talking, and we also don't know what is happening. I don't know whether the CD is in the free fall under the weight of gravity, that we should allow it to move. I mean, if you allow me to go back to my high school physics, I mean, it will be in a straight line, the CD will fall in a straight line till it get to what? It crashes? Certainly not. I think that Ghanaians deserve, a better approach in handling the CD dollar, the CD pound. Today, if you go to the market, the woman will tell you that, look, the CFA has gone up, the CFA. As if in Ghana, we are not producing anything. I don't know whether they have all the market women have become cartels and they are trying to fix prices or conspire against Ghanaian consumers. I don't know. But I think that government may need to be up. We don't know what exactly is causing the depreciation of the cedi. Is it because multinationals have started repatriating their profits away? That is what is causing. Let us know the cause. It's better you tell Ghanaians so that we can all come to a workable solution. Once we do that, I think the consumers will be more better than even talking. Some of these things, I believe in the market-based approach in resolving issues. Whether last time we went to the market and the lady was telling them, look, the plantain comes from the bush. Now the fuel prices have gone up. And so they have to. Meanwhile, the farmer who is growing the plantain is not getting anything extra. But because of the intermediary logistics, that is all causing. And at the end of the day, we are kind of inflicting a hardship on Ghanaian consumers. And everybody, Ghanaian consumer includes the His Excellency, the President, the Speaker of Parliament, you and I. And so it's something that we need to be more concerned about. That is why in most countries, they are very, very particular about consumer protection laws. They are very, very particular about things that would lead to the rise of price levels. But in Ghana, we don't care about it. There are so many inefficiencies. Let's talk about energy sector. ECG has a lot of huge administrative and technical losses. They are not addressing it. And yet they will go to PRC for a request, asking PRC to approve them a tariff increase. And when you do all these things, how do you expect your country to be competitive? Businesses are leaving Ghana to other countries, all because of the high cost of doing business. Of course, the recent exit of Global and one of the, over the weekend, we had that of this company.
Society General.
Yeah, those ones are not country specific. Yes, I mean, well,
that's what they said officially, because I asked.
Yes, but then, but until we look at efficiency, I think we live in a country where there's nothing, we don't think about efficiency. It's not just about doing something, but look at what efficient way of doing the thing so that you can become competitive. There are a lot of countries that private capital, foreign direct investors want to go. And businesses and private investors are looking at where there's efficiency. But in Ghana, whether there's efficiency here is almost zero. We don't care about the traffic that builds up on the Independence Avenue in the morning. Elsewhere, by now, people would have found ways of solving it. We invested a lot of money in the Ayalololo Now
buses,
today,
yeah.
the buses, people have just rented them for school buses. Are we serious in this country? Meanwhile, we are paying the loan. We took World Bank facility for the Ayalololo, and the buses have been parked at the garage, and a few ones are being used as what? School buses to take pupils and students around the neighborhood. I think we should gear towards efficiency. And it appears that even when you look at the political debate that is going on, nobody's even talking about efficiency. We'll do A, B, C, and D. But then whether it's the efficient way of doing it in such a way that the consumer or Ghanaian will get value for money on that.
Okay, so we'll be coming, yes, we have to go for a break and then we'll come back. So we'll come back and look at the inefficiencies in the supply chain so that we can look at the solutions that we can propose for them to be addressed. So you're watching Iron Port. Tonight we're discussing the relevance of logistics in continental trade. And I have in the studio Apia Kusi Adomako Esquire. He is the West African Director of CATS International. I also have Ziad Amui. He is the National President of Borderless Alliance. And Inaliban Ujanji, he is the Regional Chairperson and also a supply chain consultant with Supply Chain Hub Africa, I should say. We're going for a quick break. We'll be right back.
Guys, now I'm tired. I'll go on a date with whoever gets here first.
Princess, really? Okay, I dey come.
Shut up!
Mame, boss, fill my tank with Super XP Euro 95.
Well up with Super XP Ron 95 and Diesel XP high performance products from Goyle.
Sorry, Tony got here first, so I'm stepping with him.
Oh, cut him. Hey, go for a
Choose Super XP Ron 95 and Diesel XP for an energizing driving experience. Always go for Goyle Super XP Ron 95. Goyle, good energy.
Goyle is good energy. Electricity. Then pay your taxes. Yeah. Our taxes, our future.
Because you see, without our taxes, we wouldn't have good roads, good schools, better hospitals, street lights, and other very important social amenities. When we pay our taxes, we give our children free and quality education. Talga, my money too small. Why should I pay my tax? Look, small. Salifo, it doesn't matter how small or big your business or income is, you still have to pay your taxes. The little taxes from each and every one of us, when put together, could give your community clean water or that deprived school with tables and chairs. Please pay your taxes. It is your responsibility. It is your civic duty. It is the law.
Impressive factory. If only I had listened to you, I wouldn't have been in this mess. That devastating fire virtually wiped out the whole factory and my warehouse.
Remember my misfortunes last year? Serene Insurance Asset All Risk Fire policy that I took were there to pay for my damaged stocks in the warehouse. And my machines that were affected by the floods have been replaced. My accident vehicle is back on the road thanks to Serene Insurance Motor Policy. My goods are on the IC covered with their marine cargo insurance policy. I was just telling Ajima about Serene Insurance.
Oh, Ajima,
tell him more.
As a road contractor, I make sure I do my contractors all risk insurance
for the project and then workers' compensation for all the workers on site. With Serene Insurance, they will make sure they will cover your unknown tomorrow today.
Serene Insurance, a new face of insurance. Call us now.
MPS Terminal 3 is Africa's new state-of-the-art container terminal at Tema Port. For manufacturers, agro-processors and traders, the new port means business can be done faster. This infrastructure boost will improve Ghana's port handling capacity, connect more trading routes, and oil the engine of growth for the economy, creating greater opportunities across all sectors as Africa's markets merge and become the largest trading bloc globally. MPS, we connect, you thrive.
Business and life can be like the sea sometimes. Sometimes serene, sometimes calm, sometimes turbulent, and at times it brings the unexpected. However it is like, trust Phoenix Insurance for your home, car, business, and marine insurance needs. Call 0302 246 319 or 0243 690 492.
At Phoenix, you experience a delightful service delivered with wisdom.
All right, so you welcome back from the break. We're still discussing the relevance of logistics in continental trade. And now the phone lines have been activated. The numbers you can call 0205 528353. The numbers are on your screens. You can call and join the discussion. Right, so Mr. Ojanji, before we went on the break, we're looking at some of the inefficiencies and how they also add up to the cost. So, I mean, what are some of these, or how do we tackle these inefficiencies in the logistics chain?
Okay, so anything logistics is time-bound. And as a result of that, any activity within the chain that stalls or reduces the lead time, that increases the lead time for any item becomes an inefficiency within the system. And don't forget, supply chains usually are competitive when they meet two criteria, the balance of it.
Yeah.
It's either it is efficient or it is responsive. So in terms of efficiency, you're looking at how quickly, and for example, when you place an order for a product, let's say online, how much, or you look at, let me just give a general example in terms of efficiency and responsiveness, so that gives us a better context, and then we can proceed with the discussion. So in terms of responsiveness, you want to see, for example, how many fulfillment centers you want to have in a given jurisdiction or area, so that in the event that there is an order, you are able to respond faster to the order that has been made by the customer. In terms of efficiency, you may not necessarily have that many fulfillment centers. However, you have a few of them, but you are better able to utilize the space and the holding capacity of it. Now, we generally have quite a number of efficiencies. One of them has got to do with delays, like I just made mention of. You're moving a cargo from Accra maybe to any of the other Sahelian regions. You have quite a number of stops along the way. That in itself is inefficient. It takes a lot of time away. We have issues of documentation. Yes, as we travel along, there are different types of documentation that are required. And unfortunately, it looks like, and this I wouldn't blame entirely on a government-related activity, but also importers and exporters also have a responsibility in this particular, especially when it's got to do with documentation. The flow of information is not that fluid as well. And as a result of that, when you don't have the required information to be able to make certain decisions, then you go in and then you have issues. Now, I'm not too sure as to how one would classify this, but I think that to a very large extent, when you look at the kind of policy directions that we have, it also brings in a lot of inefficiencies. Why do I say this? You can look at, in terms of market structures, you can look at it in terms of value, especially when you look at the kind of policies that we have currently. We're looking at, it looks like we're looking more at the value of what we are going to rake in than the volumes we could use. And why do I say this? When you look at the breakdown in terms of taxes, this has been on the air for quite a while now, in terms of how much cargo we seem to be losing, and we are not seeming to be losing. We have as many as about 22 different levies and fees and charges that are supposed to be paid by the importer when his goods are coming in. A lot of these charges also bring about a lot of inefficiencies within the system, because if you are supposed to make a payment and the payment is not necessarily a very relevant payment that you're making at that particular point in time, then it brings in a lot of bureaucratic decision-making processes. And as a result of that, it becomes an inefficiency, even though it may end up bringing you a lot of revenue. So that's an area that I think that when it comes to government decision, it's about time that we decided as a country. And like Mr. Adomako mentioned earlier, a lot of the time the decisions are made, they are passed on, and then we just take it up. And it becomes a bit of a challenge going forward, and we are the ones struggling. I think it's about time we demand accountability from all those who we have put in authority to be able to at least let us know what exactly is happening, so that if there's any support, we can go ahead and do it. My final point would have to be on issues regards to how manifestos and all that are put together in the political circles. I mention this here because it is, I think, one of the challenges that we are having, mainly because of the fact that we are not able to put together a holistic national development plan where, irrespective of political party, we're looking at how our country is developing. And if we're able to look at how the country is developing, all these issues we are talking about in terms of exchange rate, in terms of import and export, in terms of supply chain systems, we would be in a better position to be able to manage the entire process. But because we do not have it, we're always looking out for the next 4 years where another political party comes to tell you that, hey, you know what, we want to do A, B, C, D, and it becomes more like a sloganeering, and at the end of the day, it becomes a challenge. So yes, the efficiencies are there, but I think that to a very large extent, we would also need to be able to put in those measures that demand accountability from all these people who we have put in authority to be able to act in our stead.
Very well.
So that they can come back to us and help us put some of these things, nip them in the bud.
Okay. So, Mr. Amui, you wanted to make an intervention before we went on the break, so you have the floor now.
Yes. So I slightly diverge from my brother Apia when he was talking about the enforcement and the efficiencies, simply for the reason that we need to admit and to acknowledge the fact that supply chain shocks, especially shocks to the global value chains, are affecting Africa in an amplified way because we don't have resilience and sustainability in our own internal supply chains and our logistics. We are not well connected to ourselves. So anytime there are some issues that have to do with, for example, a vessel blocking the Suez Canal, like the Evergreen vessel a while ago, the war in Ukraine, the Red Sea, Houthi attacks, and the list can go on and on and on. Every time some of these major disruptions in global value chains occur, I keep telling myself that hopefully this will be the moment of reckoning for various African governments to acknowledge the fact that they need to wake up to the fact that they need to build sustainable and resilient supply chains. And we need to go away from the extremely long value chains which are helping us in the short term to secure cheaper goods at the expense, of course, of the quality, but that is a different issue altogether. But in our search for short-term benefits of the cheaper goods, we are omitting the need to build our own local value supply chains. And then we are shooting ourselves in the foot because we are preventing ourselves from integrating efficiently and creating the regional buffers that would allow us to become more resilient and more, sustainable. We were talking, for example, about the cost of energy and power generation. It is a very, very big cost for local manufacturing and production, but at the same time, it has a silver lining because it has lowered the opportunity cost of considering shifting or transitioning to renewable energy sources. And so I think this is about the time where we have to look at how to consider embedding renewable energy into the local manufacturing and production. And that will, first of all, decentralize the production of energy. For example, in countries like Ghana, which have shortages or a combination of short supply or expensive generation or a mixture of both. So this is the first point I wanted to make with regards to what Apia was saying earlier. And the second problem, which we don't really talk a lot about in Ghana or beyond Ghana, because some of these issues are not just Ghana specific, but they are cross-cutting. And it is the enforcement of the implementation of the regional rules and regulations on a national level. And this is a mouthful. Basically, what I'm trying to say is that we have the laws and rules and regulations on country level, on regional level, on continental level, and they're all so nice and perfect. But there's one problem.
No
we are not
integration?
implementing them.
Implementing the laws, okay.
Or we are not enforcing the implementation. So let's take ECOWAS, for example. We complain a lot about ECOWAS. But we are not complaining about ECOWAS because of the laws and the rules and the regulations. We are complaining because of the lack of the implementation of these rules, of the ECOWAS trade liberalization scheme. So within our ECOWAS countries, we have the laws that allow us to trade freely among ourselves, quota-free, duty-free, for goods that are originating from within ECOWAS. Just need to register, and then we have to start trading, and then we have this opportunity. We have our own free trade agreement on a regional level, but we don't apply it. And the reason we don't apply it is because there is no mechanism for sanctions and rewards for implementing or misimplementing. It needs to be talked about. Dispute resolution. Whenever we have issues that have to do with challenges with the enforcement of the implementation of these rules and regulations, and now we are steering closer back to my brother because we are coming back to the realm of the law. So how do we solve our dispute resolutions among ourselves so that we build the trust that is required between the economic operators and the policymakers, that there's a system, there are rules and regulations that you need to meet. If you comply with these rules, then we facilitate your business, and then it is about balancing compliance with facilitation so that we will all pull together towards a more enabling and a thriving economy. So these are the two main points which I think cut across whether it is the logistics industry or the local manufacturing and production, or whether the regional value chains, which I think is the way to the future, regional value chains.
Yes.
Okay. So for me, one thing I want to say is that AFCFTA is yet to take a full steam, and we need a robust logistics to be able to make it work. And this is something that we don't expect government alone to do it, and government has no business in doing a business. But the role of government is to create an enabling framework. Just last week, we heard that Dubai government has voted $35 billion to construct a new airport terminal to make it the biggest airport. They want to make Dubai the logistic hub of the whole world, fulfillment centers all over, so that, if you ship goods, within 8 hours, it's here in your country for you. What role is government? The fact that government has no business in doing business does not mean that government should close its eyes. Government can sometimes identify some emerging areas and call the private sector and tell them that, look, if you can do this, we can support you on this. Now, by 2030, for example, Africa need an additional 2 million trucks to be able to move goods under the AFCFTA. We need close to 100,000 railway wagons, 250 aircrafts, and then 100 vessels. Currently,
100 vessels?
Yeah, 100 vessels, shipping vessels.
In Africa?
In Africa, to be able to support the demand for goods.
But we don't even have one.
Yes. So,
we might have one or two, not officially, but maybe four unofficially.
And all these things are the demand that we will need in 2030. How many years have we got from now? 6 more years. We'll close our eyes, and then 2030, then the Indians and the Chinese and the foreigners will come and take over. And I think this is the time we have to decolonize logistics in Africa. It appears that, look, everything you want to move our own by heart, non-African companies. That explains why when you want to ship goods from Tema, Takoradi port, even to Abidjan port, when the ship leaves Accra, it has to go to Madrid before it comes to Abidjan.
Yeah.
Why? Because the shipping lines operate spoke and hub. And this means you have to pay for the cost of the goods moving from Takoradi to Abidjan.
Yeah.
But if we were to have our own decolonized, own African shipping lines that move stop across, like the way what Ghana Airways was doing the East Coast, the West Coast in those days.
Yeah.
I think that goods will be able to move faster and cheaper. And we need to start to have this conversation. How do we support the private sector to be able to take advantage of the coming the demand in logistics? And I don't see a bit of political actions on that. And we hope that this conversation could be a precursor that will kind of stimulate further discussions on what needs to be done going forward.
Very well.
So that is something that I would like you to give me to indulge me in giving two quick remarks.
30 seconds. 30 seconds, yes.
And what he's saying is something that we are very passionate about as logisticians in Africa and in Ghana. And basically, it's about emphasizing the need to promote the need for an African framework for short sea shipping.
Okay.
To connect our various ports to each other.
Okay.
And the second one, to explore the inland waterways, which God has given us. We have inland waterways, we are not using that. They need low maintenance. And it's something that we are very passionate about, Taliban and myself, in Ghana and elsewhere.
Okay. So about 30 seconds.
So I think to a very large extent, we really need to put our acts together, produce a lot more.
Okay.
And I think it needs to be an intentional activity, mainly because of the fact that if we do not have the production base, we may not be able to get the volumes to be able to ship, and then the cost still increases. I support the fact that we need to be able to invest a lot more in our own lines, be it shipping lines, airlines, and all that. Because if you look at even the concentration of aviation traffic in Africa, you just understand why we are not that connected. And I think to a very large extent, logistics in itself is something that all of us should get active in. And I call everybody to join in ensuring that we advocate for a lot more logistical debates and discussions going forward.
All right. Thank you very much. So this is where we draw the curtain on this week's episode of Eye on Port. We have been discussing the relevance of logistics in continental trade, and I've been doing the discussions with Mr. Apia Kusi Adomako Esquire. He is the West African Director for CATS International, and Ziad Amui is the National President, Borderless Alliance, and Naliban Ujanji is the Regional Chairperson, CILT Next Generation, and Supply Chain Consultant with Supply Chain Hub Africa. My name is Solomon Anderson. Enjoy the rest of our programs.